During March of 2020, the world has been struck by a global emergency which has resulted in a global quarantine for safety of all. This quarantine has resulted in many recurring problems like home office, online classes, and thus avoiding many physical interactions of any kind, so that the education and employment continues as normal as possible without risk of spreading the virus. However, despite many efforts of making education as similar as it was in the past, many teen students have experienced many issues that depleted their physical and mental health due to the lack of social interaction. Having explained this, we seek to comprehend the perception of mental health of teenagers in the pandemic during March 2020 to March 2021, and the impact on their mental health and if the impact are negative, so that we devise a way to create either a product or a service that improves their health. Today, mental health is a very important issue since during the pandemic, some adolescents began to have problems with issues related to their mental health, be it depression, anxiety, exhaustion, stress, etc., which has derived from various concerns like pressure in their family's economic situation, job loss, and many other academic pressures.
Over the course of March 2020 till March 2021, it has been reported by a study carried out by Estudio Voces 19, in which 55,692 people between the age of 15 and 24 years old of age that participated virtually, that 3 out of 5 young people show symptoms of depression and 57% anxiety, 2 weeks before the survey conducted by Population Council. The Mexican Population Council has studied the issue via interviews, where 39,531 young people participated. These participants showed symptoms of anxiety and depression due to the pandemic. Also, Voces 19 showed that 7 out of 10 adolescents and young people experience depressive symptoms, while 62% said in their interviews and surveys that they had anxiety symptoms. Carrying out this research, we committed ourselves to be able to devise various solutions that are helpful and supportive for adolescents in their mental health based on our research articles, interviews, and surveys carried out by each of the team members. With the results obtained, we carefully analyzed the answers to the surveys and interviews in order to create a service or a product that satisfies and covers the needs for our focus group. Our main objectives for this topic were evaluate the use of social media between teenagers and find if this correlates with separation and disassociation of reality during the COVID-19 pandemic, and distinguish the impact between doing and avoiding physical activities during the first year of the pandemic that started in March 2020 and ended in March 2021 in teenagers and their mental health. In order to fulfill our commitment and research, we applied 4 different techniques for collecting useful information. These were being observation of social media for qualitative data, surveys for quantitative data, one-on-one interviews, and lastly, theoretical framework. We also designed a study sample in which we visualize the characteristics of the population we are analyzing. In our study sample, we are interested in teenagers from 12 till 21 years old, being male, female, gender fluid, trans, and non-binary, that live in Monterrey, Toluca, Guadalajara, Ciudad de Mexico, that are single, with a medium or high social-economic status, and with general interests such as sports, music, social interaction, social media, memes, video games, TV series, movies, working out, reading, cooking, jobs, education, and friendship.
Hi, this is our first hypothesis. A higher percentage than 75% of teenagers believe that not doing exercise during the COVID-19 pandemic can cause lower self-esteem in teenagers, leading to depression. We found an investigation by Matthias Dominski and Marks of 2020 provided the rationale to understand the relationship between physical activity at home and mental health during the COVID-19 pandemic, and showed that increased physical activity enables a reset of physical and mental well-being. After investigating in distinct social media, we found that this topic wasn't very elaborated by teenagers. In other words, they didn't talk too much about the importance of physical activities in mental health. Mainly health organizations talked about this in some posts, but other than that, the information available was little to none. In our interviews, 80% to 100% of the teenagers answered that physical activity was very important to keep a stable mental health. They mentioned that it was important because it distracts you from your problems and you release energy. But from that high percentage of teenagers that mentioned this, only very few actually did physical activities. In our surveys, more than 50% of our respondents answered that they strongly agreed physical activities were very important for a stable mental health. Even though they mentioned that physical activities are key, they also felt a great impact in their self-esteem, which can be correlated with the lack of exercise they did. Even though some teenagers don't practice physical activities throughout the pandemic, a very high percentage agreed that they are key for a stable mental health and to avoid lower self-esteem. Therefore, our hypothesis is true.
According to the results of a survey carried out by the INEGI, 1.8 million adolescents didn't complete their studies for the 2019 to 2020 school year. 58.9 indicated that it was due to issues related to COVID-19. 8.9 stated that it was due to lack of economic resources. 25.3% indicated that one of their parents lost their job, and 21.9% lacked electronic devices or internet connection. In Hypothesis 2, 70% of adolescents believe that the decline of the economy during the pandemic has caused them to look for a job to help their families. They even had to leave their studies. So for this hypothesis, we consulted some social networks such as Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube in order to determine if there was any existing information that could help us verify the hypothesis. However, within the aforementioned social networks, we were unable to find or collect sufficient information. When analyzing the surveys and interviews, we obtained very useful data. Of the 292 people surveyed, 25% selected that the economic situation has impacted their health in an interval between 7 and 10. 12% of those surveyed selected that the economic situation has had an important impact on their mental health, and 8% were affected by the economic situation derived from the pandemic. 181 people indicated that the case did arise in which a member of their families lost their job due to the pandemic. On the other hand, 111 people indicated that this case didn't occur in their families, so we can conclude that this hypothesis is not true, since none of those interviewed or surveyed had to abandon their studies for economic reasons in order to support their family. Some of the responses indicated that they did have to look for a job or that there were economic problems.
Our third hypothesis is that 70% of teenagers believe that because of the pandemic, the real social interaction and isolation, teenagers have seen a negative impact in their mental health overall. And to support this hypothesis, our theory is that the University of Amsterdam made a study in which, in fact, the results were that teenagers have seen a negative impact in their mental health, and they have seen an increase in anxiety and in sleeping problems. And well, in our social media findings, we found that the posts and the videos that we analyzed, they did in fact talk about this problem, but where we saw more interaction was in the comments, because teenagers were talking to each other, and since they could relate with one another, they mentioned that they did see a negative impact in their mental health. In our interviews, about 80% of the teenagers that we interviewed mentioned that they did see a very negative impact in their mental health at the beginning of the quarantine, because since this was a situation that they were not used to, and it was a total turnaround, they did feel the negative impact. But they also mentioned that with time, they began to see positive impacts. They learned to be alone, they learned to do more hobbies, some use their time in valuable things. So at the beginning, they did feel negative impact, but with time, they adapted to the pandemic and they found a positive impact because of the quarantine. And finally, in our surveys, in which about 300 teenagers answered, 65% mentioned that they did in fact feel a negative impact in their mental health because of being isolated and of the quarantine. And about 45% of teenagers answered that they felt a negative impact because of the economic changes that were happening in their household. And well, with all this analysis, we concluded as a team that our third hypothesis was true.
In hypothesis 4, we stated most adolescents say that excessive use of social media and digital services causes separation and dissociation of reality. According to Echeverrua and Requesens, have found that there has been some areas in the internet that may trigger behaviors in which teenagers may escape from their reality. They experience a distortion of their time when they are online, making them feel a sense of dissociation and alteration of their conscience. However, this does not mean that social media should be banned, but neither are good for the teens to spend most of their time, since there must be a control and balance between the use of social media and other activities. In our social media observation, we analyzed TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook comments and videos regarding this hypothesis, and it was found that they reported to use social media since it was the only way to find some kind of interaction with each other, and also they expressed that the reason behind the abnormal amount of the use of social media was that they used them as a way to escape from their reality. In their interviews, it was noticed several similarities with the social media observation, since more than 50% of the interviewees stated that they found the positive side of social media since it is the only way of communication that they had available to them. Talking about the surveys, in our total of 291 participants, we found a clear correlation between the use of social media in pandemic situation with the associations of the reality, since 63% agreed with this statement and did find an issue with the excessive use of social media. In conclusion, by taking this into account, the hypothesis is true, since despite having small room of disagreement with some answers, can be seen that the majority of them are positive, that social media in fact has created a dissociation with reality to teenagers, and that help the user to go to a convention where they can interact with people physically and reunite with old faces via open spaces like local plazas or parks. In order to do that, the app asks for demographics, the amount of people they would like to invite, date, and depending on the situation that the area is in, they will have certain restrictions for safety. Once it has been registered, they are granted a digital ticket to enter. Inside the facility, the user may interact with several activities that use communication and interaction.
Another solution is to create a support system using artificial intelligence. This system will help the client when needed, while teaching him about mental health. Such system will have the necessary knowledge about the actions to be carried out if a person enters in an anxiety attack, panic attack, etc. Also, in case the client is seriously unwell, the system will have access to emergency numbers and will also be able to immediately contact a mental health specialist who can help the client. It will have a pleasant appearance and it can give hugs.
This solution consists on professional aid to teenagers, and the way this works is that they access the school portal and they can schedule an appointment with a professional psychologist at whichever time they want. This will be completely free and it will be completely safe for them. This will impact the society in a very positive way because teenagers will have a safe place where they can talk about their problems and how they're feeling with a professional psychologist and get professional help. And well, this will make a complete change in their mental health, and they will greatly benefit from these sessions by having a healthy mental health.
This solution is a social media account, more specifically in Instagram, where any teenager with a mental health condition who doesn't feel very well or just want to talk could send a direct message to the account and will be attended by a professional. I think it will have a very positive impact because most of teenagers spend their time in the social media, and having the chance to get help this easy and quick will make a difference.
A solution could be to create an app that has a personal checklist with the things that you have to do during your day. You just have to create an account and the app will show you some checklist recommendation according to your daily routine. This checklist could help you to avoid staying inactive during the day and do things that could improve your mental and physical health. The app also creates alarms so that you can't forget to do important tasks like eat, drink water, do exercise, and sleep your needed hours. With this in mind, we conclude that at least more than 50% of our population study has experienced a noticeable decline in their mental health as a whole, and at least 50% has experienced at least one symptom of a mental condition due to isolation. There has been little to no issue regarding to the economic status towards their mental health. However, it has been shown that several of our population reports that doing physical activity helps to their mental health and thus their self-esteem. There has been positive remarks showing that above 50% improve in their financial status and improve in their personal area, being more reflective of themselves. Not to mention that some reported to have improved in their interpersonal aspects since the pandemic helped them reflect about themselves and to know themselves better. Lastly, there has been a noticeable demonstration that teenagers have had issues controlling their dependence towards social media.
I learned the importance of physical interactions for communication in human psyche, especially during adolescence for correct socialization. At the same time, the various factors that may affect the mental health of teens, including their needs and behavior. Working this activity, I learned mainly the importance of applying the theory into practice and the impact of the theory in the final results. I also learned the utility of these 4 techniques and to create hypotheses that are not biased from my research.
What I learned from this research is much more information about mental health and how it can be affected by various situations and problems and how these affect adolescents. At the same time, I also learned the importance of thoroughly investigating the topic that will be discussed or explained, relying on various tools to obtain the best results, and also to analyze information obtained through surveys or interviews for better data or better results.
With this study, I learned the importance of mental health because depending on the state of your mental health is how you see things, how you do things. And I learned that it has been changing during the pandemic, specifically for teenagers, which opened my mind because I myself am a teenager. And well, through this study, I learned that teamwork and getting to know your peers at the beginning is key to obtain fluid and quality work. And I also developed my skills of obtaining primary and secondary information and of developing correct hypotheses that guide the study overall.
I learned a lot with this activity. Since the beginning of the course, we saw the process we were about to start, and it was something really new for me. I learned how the correct way of researching and making hypotheses, and how to make an interview in the right way for both sides, the research and the interviewing. Putting in practice all the learnings we saw in class was very, very constructive. Finally, talking about my research topic, I reassured my opinion about the importance mental health has, and how the pandemic was a big struggle for most of the people of my age.
This research led me to many learnings. One of them was that it doesn't matter if you were a social or an introvert person. When the COVID pandemic arrived, we all felt some kind of disturbance in our lifestyle. Another thing that I learned was that indeed doing exercise can improve your mental health. I thought it was just like a myth, but there are real research papers that show the benefits of doing it.